Neptune is the sole biggest planet that is not visible without a telescope. It is approximately 1/5 as bright as the faintest stars visible to the unaided eye, having an apparent magnitude of 7.8. NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, is one of the most iconic agencies in the United States. The agency has been responsible for many of America's historical best moments with its research and achievements. With one of the largest budgets for any agency in the US, NASA is equipped to sponsor many high-powered types of research. However, by joining forces with SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, NASA has unlocked many more chances. The latest example of the chance is the discovery on planet Neptune. What has Elon Musk and NASA discovered on the biggest planet? Watch this video to the end to know all about what was discovered, how it was discovered, and how it changes everything. What is the longest distance you have ever traveled? You could have covered thousands of miles if you had moved from one continent to another, possibly in an aircraft or a ship. That is child's play when compared to the Voyager 2's journey. Moving in the opposite direction to its twin, the Voyager 1, the spacecraft reached planet Neptune in 1989, 12 years after it took off from Earth. It was and still is on a journey through the sun. What it discovered on Neptune was really unexpected and mind-blowing. The spacecraft beamed the first images of the planet's rings, but another discovery was a massive and violent storm. NASA scientists were not expecting the storm Voyager 2 sent the pictures of. It was spotted in the southern hemisphere, appearing as a counterclockwise wind of up to 1,500 miles per hour or 2,414 kilometers per hour. It was the strongest record ever. Astronomers named it the Great Dark Spot. After 5 years, it had gone by the time the Hubble Space Telescope looked at the planet. This led to lots of questions about why the winds were so strong. However, the strong wind was not the only thing that confused scientists about Neptune. Neptune's temperature was also an enigma. Voyager 2 revealed that Neptune is warmer than Uranus despite being farther from the solar system. Uranus was not following the path predicted by Newton's laws of motion and the gravitational forces exerted by the Sun and the known planets. Furthermore, more than 20 recorded pre-discovery sightings of Uranus dating back as far as 1690 disagreed with the calculated positions of Uranus for the respective time at which each observation was made. It appeared possible that the gravitational attraction of an undiscovered planet was perturbing the orbit of Uranus. The conventional understanding was that the farther you go from the Sun in the galaxy, it becomes colder, and Neptune had more sun than Uranus. Everyone wondered where the heat on Neptune was coming from. As physicist Brian Cox discussed in his BBC documentary The Planets, the source of this extreme heat remains a mystery. However, the bigger puzzle was whether the two usual behaviors, that is the strong wind and the elevated temperature, were in any way tied. Some scientists even made mention that unraveling one mystery would explain the other. Measuring Neptune's temperature, however, is not so easy. For example, you can take measurements on the plane's solid surface and calculate the worldwide average on Earth. This phenomenon is not possible on Mars, which is made up of gases. So in the process, you should take the temperature of Neptune as it needs to be at an altitude. This is where another decision is made. At what altitude will the measurement be taken? There is something else about the temperature measurement taken by the Voyager 2. At that point, the temperature of Neptune is not so much higher than that of Uranus. But since Neptune receives less sun illumination because it's farther from the Sun, it shouldn't be the problem. This similarity in temperature suggests that Neptune is warmer in terms of how much heat it emits compared to the amount of heat it absorbs from the Sun. As stated previously, the progression of temperature as you go farther away from the Sun shows Jupiter to be the warmest of the gas giants, Saturn next, then Neptune. Uranus is the one that is out of place. Del Genio explained the oddity further. Yet that unusual result is associated with the fact that Uranus does not have a significant internal heat source. In other words, Neptune is finding a way to warm itself up to the level of Uranus, while the latter is unable to generate any extra heat other than that gleaned from the Sun. In response to Anthony Del Genio of the NASA Goddard Institute for Area Research, Voyager's measurements present Neptune emit greater than twice as a lot of warmth because it absorbs from the solar, whereas Uranus doesn't. This does not make Neptune uncommon though. In fact, it also makes Uranus weird because other planets like Jupiter and Saturn also emit more heat than they absorb from the Sun. The heat contracts out of primitive solar nebula, forming an effect known as the Kelvin-Helmholtz contraction. The extra heat source on Neptune, Jupiter, and Saturn are primarily due to gravitational contraction. As the planet slowly gravitationally contracts, the material falling inward changes its potential energy into thermal energy, which is then released upwards out of the planet. For Uranus not to have such a solar source, something must have happened to it. So the question scientists are looking for an answer to is, why does Neptune produce heat internally but Uranus is unable to? Hopefully, these puzzling conspiracy theories will be solved after another research and discovery, and the question will be answered.